The F-57 Sabre, the Terran Confederation's premier heavy fighter for most of the 2660s. Its versatility and power allowed it to fulfill almost every role a fighter craft could take on during the Kilrathi War. Debuting sometime in the late 2650s to early mid-2660s, Sabres were a common sight in the Terran Confederation front lines, though perhaps the most remembered stories of its service began in 2667, specifically during their time aboard the legendary TCS Concordia. During this point in the war was Confed's decade-long effort to liberate the Enigma sector from the Kilrathi Empire, who were always threatening to spill out of control and subjugate the Terran worlds. As the Sabre was a frontline heavy fighter that fought virtually everywhere in the war, especially in the Enigma sector, it would be impossible to name every single battle it took part in. Perhaps the best method to describe how the Sabre performed in its duties would be to see it through the eyes of one of Confed's most storied pilots during the last days of the Enigma sector campaign. That pilot being Captain Christopher "Maverick" Blair. His career in the Confederation Space Forces is quite well known, but to give a brief recap, Blair initially served aboard the TCS Tiger's Claw in the 2640s, until her destruction during the first assault on K'tithrak Mang. Maverick, being the only survivor, insisted that Kilrathi stealth fighters had destroyed the venerable carrier. But as his black box had mysteriously disappeared, he was demoted to captain for dereliction of duty and sent to Caernarvon Station, a posting far away from the front lines of the war. His perceived actions also won him the title of the Coward of K'tithrak Mang. 10 years later, a series of unusual circumstances brought him back to active duty aboard the TCS Concordia in her flight wing. Overcoming the prejudices of the crew due to his status of the Coward of K'tithrak Mang, Blair time and again brought victory and glory to the Concordia Air Wing as an ace pilot. But it wasn't until a turn of events during the eve of the Second Battle of K'tithrak Mang did things turn around for him. A Concordia pilot had been outed as a traitor, Zachary "Jazz" Coulson. Ever since Blair came aboard, Jazz had caused trouble and mayhem aboard the carrier in the hopes of tarnishing Maverick's reputation further, as revenge for him in the Tiger's Claw failing to save his colony world 10 years prior. Adding on top of his list of crimes was the fact that Jazz stole Blair's flight recorder during the last battle of the Tiger's Claw, which would have cleared Maverick of any involvement in the destruction of the carrier. Before the noose could finally close around his neck, Jazz had sabotaged the Concordia hangar bay and fled in the Sabre to find sanctuary among the Kilrathi. Captain Blair, who was flying the only Concordia plane on patrol during his escape, was redirected to intercept the traitor, a task in which he relished wholeheartedly. Upon reaching Jazz, the two shared a few choice words along with an offer of surrender from Blair, which Jazz foolishly rejected. A tense duel between the two Sabre pilots erupted, particle cannon bolts, mass driver rounds, and missiles quickly filling the space around them. The power of the two ships were evenly matched, and if Maverick was piloting anything else, he might not have survived. But once again defying the odds, Blair inevitably triumphed by destroying Jazz's Sabre, forcing him to eject and avoid his much-deserved fate. Blair, fighting his urge to flat-out kill the man right then and there, brought him back to the Concordia to eventually stand trial for his crimes. But in a surprising turn of fate, once they returned to the Concordia, they found Blair's black box from the last battle of the Tiger's Claw among Jazz's possessions, which easily proved Maverick's claims about that fated day, and thereby clearing his reputation at long last. Now, with the traitor dealt with, it was finally time to launch the attack on the Kilrathi starbase of K'tithrak Mang. If this operation succeeded, the Kilrathi Empire would be forced to pull their forces from the sector and effectively bring a victorious end to the Enigma sector campaign. The stakes were high, the tension was palpable, but the entire Concordia flight wing was eager to take the fight to the cats, especially Captain Blair. Freshly exonerated from his status as the Coward of K'tithrak Mang, Blair was finally going to finish the mission his lost friends aboard the Tiger's Claw had attempted to do all those years ago. But Admiral Tolwyn had other ideas. Tolwyn was the flag officer aboard the Concordia, and only through a quirk of fate and the insistence of Colonel Jeanette "Angel" Devereaux, the Concordia's commander air group, did Tolwyn grudgingly allow Blair a spot on his duty roster. But make no mistake, Tolwyn was the one who personally sunk Blair's career over the loss of the Tiger's Claw, and nothing in the universe would make him think positively of Maverick. Despite the new evidence contradicting his long-held beliefs about Blair, and perhaps still not trusting the man, Tolwyn ordered Angel to keep Maverick from the final assault on the Kilrathi starbase, instead relegating him to fly forward patrol duty to blunt any preventative attack from the Kilrathi upon the Concordia. Blair had finally reached a breaking point. Ever since he came aboard the Concordia, he was faced with scorn and distrust from the Admiral. And now that he was proven to not be the coward everyone believed him to be, the Admiral still denied him? No. Enough was enough. If Tolwyn was going to be unreasonable like that, Blair was going to give him a reason to be truly enraged by his actions. Convincing his tech chief to change the loadout of his Sabre to include phased torpedoes, Maverick was going to live up to his call sign for once and defy orders by taking out the K'tithrak Mang starbase by himself. There was only one problem. Crown Prince Thrakath Nar Karanka, first in line to the Imperial throne and an ace combat pilot in his own right. Thrakath, stationed aboard the K'tithrak Mang starbase, was informed by his underlings that a single human fighter had broken through their lines and was on a direct course for them. Thrakath was the one who set the stage for the destruction of the Tiger's Claw and the framing of Blair all those years ago. If Confed wasn't going to get rid of him, then Thrakath was going to have to do it himself. The battle between the two was tense, despite being an elite highborn of the Kilrathi Empire and armed with a state-of-the-art fighter. Blair and his Sabre were able to match Thrakath's abilities in piloting, gunnery, and even over-the-comms insults typical of dogfighting duels during the war. Maverick Sabre being able to more than withstand the hits from Thrakath's purportedly superior fighter, while being able to return said blows in spades. Inevitably, Maverick was able to gain the edge on his Kilrathi nemesis, destroying his ship and forcing him to eject. With the road to K'tithrak Mang open, Blair charged through the Drakhai Imperial Guard and launched his do-or-die attack on the Kilrathi starbase. Despite the tense knife fight that was the battle with Thrakath, Maverick's loyal Sabre was able to brush off its previous encounter and help the ace pilot make a mockery out of the best warriors the Kilrathi had to offer. Finally, one torpedo run later, the base was turned into a raging inferno of debris and fire. Blair returned to the Concordia a hero, basking in the adulation of his crewmates and the newfound respect Admiral Tolwyn now had for the man. The entire tale of Blair and K'tithrak Mang is a testament to the Sabre's capabilities and versatility. While Maverick was an ace pilot himself, could he have dueled a Kilrathi prince, fought multiple Kilrathi fighters, and destroy a starbase successfully with, say, a broadsword, or a raptor, or, God help us all, a scimitar? While not denigrating any of those ships, it seems highly unlikely. With the Enigma Sector campaign successfully concluded, the Sabre would be used to secure the Confederation's interests in a number of both known and unknown battles all across the multiple theaters of war, such as the First and Second Battles of Vukhar Tog, where the Confederation Fleet Marines were tasked with taking the Kilrathi Dowager Empress's palace to lure the bulk of the Kilrathi fleet away from Kilra into a cleverly designed trap, which then allowed for the TCS Tarawa's historic end run to Kilra, humanity's first offensive into the Kilrathi homeworld. On both these fronts, the Sabre performed gloriously in the roles of planetary assault, space combat, and anti-capital ship operations during the end run. Eventually, the Sabre's role in the defense of the Terran Confederation would climax with the near-disastrous events of the False Armistice, where they would fight in the battle for Warsaw, Sirius, and finally, Earth. After the battle for Earth, the new generation of Confed fighters and bombers would begin taking the spotlight in the frontline service, with the Sabre's role eventually being superseded by the far less aesthetically pleasing Thunderbolt 7. Although, Sabres could still be found in the frontier worlds of the Republic of Landreich and the Union of Border Worlds, defending humanity's interests far from the core of Terran space. When it comes to the numbers and specifications of the Sabre, it is 23.6 meters long with a mass of 22 tons. The ship was designed for 2 people, a pilot at the front cockpit and a gunner for the rear turret in the aft. In regards to offense, the Sabre carries a very healthy complement of guns and missiles. For its guns, the Sabre has 2 wing-mounted mass drivers, along with 2 particle cannons, a decent-sized punch against any spacecraft, Kilrathi or Terran, that would make the foolish decision to pick a fight with the Sabre. The fighter was also equipped with a rear turret to keep hostile tailgaters away. This turret was equipped with a dual-mounted neutron gun and a tractor beam which could be used for search and recovery operations. Of course, dogfighting during the latter half of the Kilrathi War was not limited to guns alone, though it was perhaps the most popular option. Missiles were often a viable alternative loaded onto the strike craft of both sides. The Sabre is no exception, as a default loadout came equipped with 4 Spiculum image recognition missiles, 2 Pilum-Friender foes, and 2 Dart dumbfires. However, there were also times when the Sabre could be called upon to engage and destroy enemy capital ships. That was because the Sabre could be outfitted with 2 phase torpedoes that a skilled pilot could use to destroy any ship or starbase that was far too over-reliant on their phase shields to protect them. A prominent example of the Sabre's versatility in this regard was with their service aboard the TCS Tarawa. The Tarawa, and almost definitely the other Wake-class carriers. The Sabre served dual roles as heavy fighter and bomber. Due to the design of the Wake's hangar, it simply could not fit the massive broadsword bomber, the primary anti-capital strike craft of the time. So, as the Sabre was able to use phase torpedoes in the first place in place of the Dart dumbfires, they found themselves participating in operations to assault enemy cruisers and carriers more so than they would have in other postings. As a good offense can only be sustained by a good defense, the Sabre was no slouch in this regard either. Its shields were rated 8 to 10 centimeters armor equivalent, while the torpedo-loaded variant is rated at slightly less at 7.6 centimeters to 10 centimeters armor equivalent. Armor, for some inexplicable reason, does not have a definitive number. Jones Fighting Spacecraft has the Sabre at 16 centimeters armor fore and aft, with 11 centimeters at the sides, whereas certain official sources have the standard Sabre at 20 centimeters fore and aft, with 18 centimeters at the sides, while the Torpedo Sabre has 12 centimeters front and back and 9 centimeters at the sides. As a heavy fighter, its speed was comparable, and even in some cases, superior to other equivalents of its time. Its maximum velocity was 400 kilometers per second, with a cruising speed of 220 kilometers per second, with the afterburners engaged kicking it up to 1200 kilometers per second. Maneuverability, as expressed through the Sabre's yaw, pitch, and roll, are rated 8 degrees per second. However, this number is brought down slightly with the torpedo-loaded Sabre to 7 degrees per second. When talking about the speed of any ship in the known universe, it must be explained why there is a maximum speed in the vacuum of space. That's because of how the fusion engines are designed for every spacefaring vessel, from the biggest capital ships to the smallest of fighters regardless of faction. The fusion engines consist of 2 parts, the engines themselves that propel the ship, and a ram scoop of sorts consisting of electromagnetic field generators that project a ram scoop field several kilometers around and ahead of the ship. This field collects hydrogen gas that goes through the engine intakes to be converted into fuel stored in the ship's tanks. Capital ships can use this process to move and refuel themselves without needing external support to continue operating. However, smaller craft such as fighters always consume slightly more fuel than they take in. As such, they require periodic refueling from a carrier or a base. The main downside to this method is that the act of taking in hydrogen using the ram scoops is that it creates drag on the ship or vessel in question. Thus, the maximum speed of anything can be calculated by the power of their thrust and the size of the ship. As a result, capital ships are far slower than the smaller and more nimble strike craft. The ram scoops can go scoops closed, allowing for some incredible speeds up to 200,000 kilometers per second. However, the problem is that the ship becomes impossible to maneuver at such speeds. One can't help but look back at the legacy of the Sabre with awe and respect. Here was a fighter that did practically everything a ship could be asked of in a war, and not once did it ever fail in its duties. Who knows? Maybe, much like the rapier and broadsword, there could have been a resurrection of the Sabre space frame in the Nephilim Wars. But regardless, the Sabre has a long history of being a proud defender of the human race. Any pilot, confed, citizen, or even the enemies it once fought can look upon the Sabre and see strength and power proven time and again by the annals of history.